So you're going to bring any goodies to the show?
Oh yeah. Well, besides the zines and hopefully some sort of representation of the Walter stuff, I got some like Ninja Scroll sketches that I'll be selling, as well as some Akira sketches too. So probably bring some of those down there.
Oh my gosh! So are we almost hitting the Kayfabe-tober again? So you did it. You finished by the time October rolled around again. I think that is so honorable because, to be honest, these sketch timbers, I've never been able to do a full month straight. I always start out strong and then fall off by the end.
No, I didn't finish it like in September or October or whatever. Yeah, right, October.
Yeah, October's coming up.
Inktober.
Well,
October.
see, the thing was they started Inktober and that got kind of ruined. So I think it's great that you're going to bring some sketches. I'm going to make sure to have some original artwork there at the show too. Other than that, we've got other stuff coming up. I'm going to plug my workshop next Wednesday. I'm going to start doing a thing called Workshop Wednesdays. It's going to be in person and then recorded live for those who want to check it out later. And that's me just kind of sharing my drawing process. I feel like I've got some skills to share as far as how you can use the right tools and the right process to make really great art. The workshop is called Drawing from Your Imagination. So I'm thinking it the same way you would draw a quiver to fire your bow. I'm thinking the idea of drawing from your imagination kind of has a double meaning for me. You know, it's like you're pulling forth your ideas, and I think drawing is a communication tool that anyone can get better at. And that doesn't matter what line of work you're in or where you come from or what culture you're in. You know, drawing to me is as essential as writing. Great. You know, writing is basically a form of drawing.
It is. Yeah. I was reading this Linda Berry making comics thing is really, really cool. I recommend you check it out as a teacher.
Yeah.
And it actually has like kind of like a lesson plan thing in it too, from what I remember of it. So there's something you can like kind of do as well, but like it's badass, and it delves into like, you know, basically how when you were a kid, like when you're drawing your name, you know, you're drawing your name, you're like each letter was its own like thing.
Totally. Well, and then I'm thinking of like a magician or something. It's like the most magical thing you can do is take something that doesn't exist and make it appear before your eyes. And when you sit down with a pen and a piece of paper, you're somehow conjuring up something from your mind and putting it out into the real world. You know, it's like a spell. You're putting someone under a spell when they read a book and they're just like getting mesmerized by weird scratches on a page, and somehow it's putting a new idea in their head. That's, to me, the magic. Yeah. So that's why I'm calling the workshop Drawing from Imagination. We're going to not talk about magic as much as we're going to talk about graphite and charcoal, the importance of using an eraser in your process, and kind of even doing art that's not really my comic book stuff, but the kind of stuff that I do when I'm, you know, sketching before I do a painting, and, you know, other techniques and tools that people are going to love. It really has to do with understanding shape and understanding composition, understanding light and dark. Really, the real secret for drawing from imagination is to know how to draw from life and how to really use your eye as much as you use your hand. So that's me like losing my voice going on and on about the workshop on Wednesday. Just wanted to throw that in real quick. Okay, we've got those events that we want to tell you about, but I also want to turn back to the machines that we've got here. So the Shadow Gallery has kind of transformed this side of the shop. Tell me right now, what is your ultimate vision for what this scene could look like on the gaming side?
Right now, I think it's 5 screens? No, 6 screens. 6 screens of game action, retro game action that will be heading our way here pretty soon. Well, it's here. Whether or not people want to play it is the question. But it's going to be, well, starting at like $3 for 15 minutes, $5 for a half hour, and $9 for an hour. But it's on up from Super NES, Genesis, PlayStation 1, 2, 3, Xbox 360, GameCube, 64, all of them for you to come in and kick it and play.
Sweet. Yeah, and you got a whole stack of chairs, so you can just get them out when people want to come down and game.
Yep.
So this is in Old Town Eureka, right? We're right across from Siren Song, like a block from the center of the plaza in Old Town.
Yep. 320 2nd Street, Suite 1A. It's we're open 4 to 9 every day except Thursday currently. We'll be changing up the hours here pretty soon, but that's the current hours.
So people might also know it by the brick courtyard. It's like a really cool spot in town, and obviously like people come down here, check out the galleries, go shopping, get a bite to eat. So one thing you can also do is come and do a little retro gaming. So just pull out one of these Sega Genesis games that people could play if they came down here.
Sure. Well, we got your classic Altered Beast. Rise from your grave.
Altered Beast. Okay, so again, let's see, we're right in the Sega. These are the prime years. And then what's the other classic one? Who's our favorite mascot of the system?
Well,
here?
we got Sonic, dude. Come on.
So these games are not for sale, but people can come in and they can play these games.
Yes. These
and
ones
check it out.
Are renters.
Okay.
So, well, yeah, you can come in and play them on the systems that we have here, or if you have a system at your home, you can rent them here as well.
So yeah, and you have a couple of different options for people who want to be able to rent stuff.
We have
give us those breakdowns.
We got our library programs, which essentially gives you different point values that you can then use to borrow all of the media that we have. Including books, music, and movies, as well as the games. And that's a $10 or $20 monthly thing, and so you essentially have like a set amount of stuff that you can take out at one time, and when you bring it back, you can also then get more stuff.
Okay.
So it's just like a little capper or whatever.
Okay, so you have a certain amount of points that you can use at any one time, however you want, and you just got to bring the stuff back on time. All right.
Yeah. And also there is, your typical kind of video store thing with like $3 for a week for video game rentals as well. And then movies are $2 for a week for the first two, and then $1 each for additional up to 10 at a time for a week. It's
really cool. So I like that you're using the word media. So instead of a video store, it's just a media store, because if someone wanted VHS tapes, if they wanted books to read, you've got a little something from every era that it's pretty great.
Yeah, definitely little mini borders or something.
So I'm just thinking though, so your vision that goes along with this, you'd come in here 5 o'clock, like 4 or 5 people decide they want to come and play different games. They could either get on like one of these systems and play together, or they could each play their own system. So you could have one friend who's playing the Super Nintendo while someone else is playing the N64, and you'd be side by side. So we also had fun setting up the hacked Wii system that has a bunch of fun stuff on it. So we're still trying to figure out how we can make those available. So for people who are into doing all kinds of ROMs and stuff like that, that's a whole different world for people. Harley, I'm choking right here, but he's got the consoles, folks. He's got the games. What systems did you see? Wii, PlayStation 2.
Well, PlayStation 1, 2, and 3, Xbox 360, Wii U, 64, GameCube, Dreamcast. I think there's some missing, but yeah, there's quite a few, and plenty for everybody to come down and.
I'm just checking this out right here. These are player guides. Someone told me I should really play this game. So I have, the reason I'm happy to bring you my Wii is because that's going to free up the TV. I can pull out my old PS3 and play Oblivion for the first time. Someone told me it's their favorite game. So, you know, out of respect to someone who says it's their favorite game of all time, it makes me go, I should probably give it a try.
It's a good one. I definitely didn't play it myself. I watched Crystal play it, ex of mine, and it was really cool. Like, I think it wound up frying our first 360 that we had, though.
Okay.
Like, I think Bethesda games were just like notorious for that for whatever reason, just like red ringing people.
Oh my gosh,
right.
Too powerful. So. Yeah, I played Skyrim and I had fun with that, but it's really in depth, pretty huge with the crafting system and all that kind of stuff. So I might give that a try. I think it's just cool too for that you have those manuals. So anyone who's into the retro nostalgic gaming should come on by and check it out. Yeah, what other things can you say about changes in the shop?
Well, you know, just trying to scale down to accommodate this kind of video game section. Basically, just, did a lot to turn the footprint of the cases and whatnot a lot less, I don't know.
Okay.
What the word
Oh,
is.
yeah.
A lot less prevalent.
Well, just dealing with how much you have, I can see why you would want to do that. But so then it's so funny when people are doing collecting, like having the case with the inserts becomes such a huge thing. And I think it's really strange to see, like the way that you have been a collector for so long, so much of the online culture has grown up around that. Whether that's people on YouTube who videotape their thrift store hauls, or you know, this new app Whatnot, where people are trying to capitalize on this newfound love of collecting that people have.
True.
I guess eBay is kind of the same way, where you can really hunt things down and you can find a lot of stuff, you know.
No, it's the acquisition is a whole lot easier now. Well, there is actually, I guess that is the program thing that I just kind of initialized. It's like this ABC thing that I kind of, we've got a sign of it over there, but the rundown is basically I've got a lot of books that I've acquired for the shop that I want to lend out as opposed to sell. But a lot of people want to buy as opposed to borrow. So I have a thing set up where essentially people will hop onto the internet, purchase a book for me to get sent here, and then buy the copy that I have here just for a very small price as a convenience charge for them taking the thing home with them. So I still get to keep the item to then lend out in the future, but it just comes to me at a later date, and then they go home with the copy that I have right now.
Interesting. So
and that's essentially something that I'm thinking about doing with the entire shop. Like, if somebody is willing to go that step with, say, a video that they really want, or a video game that they really want.
So something that, you know, is maybe really, really valuable because it's more, you know, more valuable because it's older and more rare, they can have it for whatever the fair market price is on the spot, basically.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's really interesting, because you're someone who kind of maintains this as a historian, and also it's like a lot of stuff that maybe you have to, like, you know, some of these videos and stuff are not are harder to
stumble upon in your day-to-day wanderings.
Right.
So it very well could be a resource for certain collector types. Whether or not they're going to cruise through Eureka, California is questionable, but like I still like offering the facility for that to occur. So
I think as a special type of person, you know, who's out there looking for a long lost missing VHS tape, you know, and I really respect it. For a long time, I really wanted to keep my VHS and collection together, even though as modest as it was. It always felt like preserving it was important to me. And I feel the same way. It's funny when I think about vinyl and cassettes, and how the last thing I heard was that vinyl, is outselling compact discs. So, so I'm just really impressed by the shop, and I love this model. I was talking to Harley about us maybe making some custom Game Boy ROMs that could be played here at the shop. And wouldn't that be fun if we had a place for indie developers? Hey, calling all programmers, artists. If we started making some humble-made retro games and gave people a place where they could play them, it would just, make my dream come true. Absolutely. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I would love to combine the creative juices to make that kind of thing happen. Like I said, that RPG Maker is something that I loved tooling around with, but I never really went very far with it. But I'd love to continue in that regard.
Yeah,
haven't made any kind of gaming things happen in a long time, or attempts, I should say. But
yeah, so I've got a new piece of software that allows me to actually make Game Boy ROMs. So you couldn't actually put them onto a Game Boy cart per se, but they would run on anything that runs Game Boy emulation, right? So a lot of the handhelds that are out there are basically, old Game Boys, so it's fun to come and nerd out about games. We wanted to give a nod to Street Fighter. We did that in part 1. Part 2 is all about what we've got coming up and around here in the community, and it's really cool to see how things are always growing and changing. And for both of us, it's been like a really long, hard-fought journey to get our books out into the world. So it's really exciting to finally be kind of near that finish line. And it's like, what would you say, what it feels like when you have a story in your head and you just want to tell it to the world? Was that something you went through?
Sure. Yeah. And trying to, bring those ideas into a picture format, it's tricky, man. Like you definitely, you can come up with the ideas, and the execution is really tricky. But it's awesome.
And there's so many different stages, and you kind of have one idea going in, and then you learn what the pitfalls are, and the reason why it usually takes a team of people to produce a comic book is because you have everyone highly specialized to do a different part of the job. And if you're going to be a self-published indie comics creator, you're going to have to learn all those different steps. And even if you're a small team, if it's an artist and a writer, there's all those other people that help. The big two, they have a huge infrastructure from the legal department and the distribution side of things. And so for you to come up with your own artwork, come up with your own story, and work with a partner or two to make it happen, it's pretty amazing feat
beforehand. But even that's all the stuff leading up to it. Then getting it published into an actual tangible thing is a whole nother fun bit of business. And being happy with the quality of the tangible thing too.
Totally. Do you have any ways that you go about making your page layouts? I think for a lot of people that's the big question. We're like, well, how do I go from a piece of plot to actually having a page that flows real nice? And
well, I guess that's hard to say now, because it really depends on if it's something that I'm crafting or if it's something that somebody's written. Because with Jesse and the plot of the comic, it's page script, so it's panel layouts. Well, it's panels. It's maybe not necessarily how they are on the page, but if it's a number of panels, then there's only really a certain way that those panels can take place on the page.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to work that out.
There's kind of a grid that you're starting with. Like if you think of maybe you could cut up into 9 panels, and then you can kind of stretch across those. Like even just thinking of it like that really helps. And so you can do some dynamic things. You can break out of panels, and if whatever, depending on the look of your book, you can break all the rules. But at the end of the day, it does help to kind of break it up
like
and make
4,
some rules for yourself.
3, 6, yeah. So, but yeah,
because you want it to read as one book. There's no one way to do it, but you want, from page 1 to the last page, you want it to kind of feel like it's the same thing. Because you could have, huge splash pages that are double wide. You can do little narrow columns, but if you're all over the place, it's not going to read as one piece of art. You have to have some kind of thread, of consistency.
Yeah, generally there's a character to keep you grounded through the thing, hopefully.
Oh yeah, definitely. There was some, real inspiring stuff. There's like some 9 panel pages done in Watchmen, and I think of Scott McCloud's book. He mentioned good books for people into learning comics. That really talked about the power of sequential art and the passage of time. That's one of these cool mediums that actually you're playing with the distance of time. So it's not just the physical look, but every time you're going from one panel to another, you're either going quickly through time, or there could be a big gap. You could have a montage like in a movie where maybe there's 100 years goes by. I could show you a picture of a little boy in a park, and then I could show you a tombstone with the boy's name on it. And if I do that, that a whole lifetime went by between those two panels.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing you brought up. It was like, that passage of time, and there's usually a gutter. And I was thinking about like how I draw, or how I've been drawing pages for a long time, and I don't really have a gutter. I just have a line that's just separating those images. And I mean, technically it's still a gutter, but it's not that same kind of actual space. It's just like a line. So like, is it not giving it that much, am I not giving it the breathing room, the right breathing room between the images? Maybe?
Another thing that you can do is you can have panels on top of each other. So maybe there's never a gutter, and you just have little panels on top. Whenever you do that, it tends to trigger in my mind, just as like a comic trope, that it's kind of you're seeing different angles within the same moment. Or that works if you really want to do something in real strict chronology, like a leaf falling from a tree. It's like you're almost just cutting it up to show the full motion. You can do some really fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a trip to think about it like that, because I mean, I just do pretty much all of my pages like that. And so like, I'm fucking with my timing.
Well, and then it's kind of mind-blowing, like, to think about that gap, that absence of anything printed on the page being like a void. There's that weird kind of like, you as the creator are creating such an imaginary world. It's like, you have the power to change the passage of time.
Yeah. And I don't know, man. I guess it comes down to also like hating negative space, really. Like, I understand its need. Obviously, I can't have an entirely full image of whatever stuff.
It's hard to leave it white. It's like, if anything, you kind of, part of you wants to just make the whole background black and not have that little white space. But then as you start like referencing other comics that work really well, they do use that to their advantage.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, I just have to grin and bear it and figure out how to work with it.
What I'm trying to do with Days of the Week right now is pretty much on every page there's at least one panel that has no gutter and goes all the way to the full bleed of the page. So almost all the panels would fit in with a little bit of a border before the edge of the paper. And then I'm trying to make at least one panel that's actually like a background. And usually if there's like something that happens sequentially, like right after or during the same thing that you're seeing, I'll stack them up. So for me, if you start stacking panels, it starts making you feel like this is happening at the same time, right? Like I can show, the ball hitting the bat at the same time, the drip of sweat is coming off the pitcher's forehead. And if I do them stacked, suddenly it feels like it's happening, like there's no split in time at all, because there's no gap, no gutter. And so even just explaining it to you now makes me want to go and look back and see if I actually did that, or if I did that well, because I think that would be it. It is how I think about it.
It's fun working with the mechanics of imagery.
That was all just because I was remembering the word sequential. So a lot of people call it sequential art. So, and then if you think back to the comic strip, where I think comic books really owe a lot to what the comic strip did, I think that's where we get the standard of separate panels and this kind of, you're telling a story. And a lot of those comic strips that we fell in love with, like Garfield, have a really strict formula for the number of panels that they use. So, just a nod to that early sequential art, the idea of a sequence of different moments. That's why they call it that. And I think it's also like the kind of fancy term. So, oh no, we don't do comic books, we do sequential art. Right. Yeah. But it's a great name for it.
Comics, yeah.
I think it separates it from the cover art, where I think a lot of us fall in love with the covers of comics, and we start just drawing characters and splash pages. A lot of people don't even ever try. They love comics, they love drawing comic characters, but they never actually try and do the sequential part.
Actual, like, story type shit happen, yeah.
So that's kind of like me. I've just like been practicing drawing characters for all this time.
That was kind of me too for a very long time. And then, I don't know, probably about 8 years ago or something, well, more than that now, maybe about 10, 12 years ago, I started, like, doing little bits of story, little stuff in my sketchbook, as far as this one. Started out with her name as Shari, but I've kind of, like, shifted to have her name be Gray now, which is kind of, like, that patched character, the eye patch character, like this kind of like post-apocalyptic Humboldt story.
So her name is not Gray. You mean that it's unknown?
Oh no, that's her name.
Okay. See, okay, now I'm curious. She sounds very mysterious, coming from the Humboldt fog.
Yeah. So that was kind of like it was like a play on that, really. It was like, I think the comic was going to be called The Gray Area. Sweet. And it was going to be about like, it's like the Bay Area, but it's gray. So, Gray Area.
Well, it's funny.
It's also, kind of a weird little blip as well, sort of culturally, too.
It's funny because that's kind of how Days of the Week started, too, was me wanting to do a story that was kind of more grounded in the real world. But I wanted my characters to just be so over the top that they would be the most ridiculously lucky and unlucky people that you've ever met in real life. Meaning all the crazy shit that happens to them could technically happen, physically happen, but it's so over the top. Like, so especially my main character Ma, that's kind of somewhat based on me in my wilder days, where sometimes like my good fortune would lead to misfortune, would lead to good fortune, this kind of bat out of hell, tumbling down the hill kind of persona. And then his alter ego is Doc, who is much more grounded and like practical when it comes to things, a little more cultured of the world, you might say, too. And then there's kind of a love triangle that ends up developing between them and the third roommate. And so that was very akin to like situations that I was in. So I really wanted to tell this like love triangle story where once again, they're hopeless. They can never make it work out. So that kind of spills over into the rest of their life. The same kind of chaos you get in life and relationships, they end up having by pissing off rival gangs, rival drug dealers, the police, and I kind of like this idea of like personal relationships, and then reflecting that through the crazy situations that they get in, and it kind of tests who they are. And especially when you think you're one person and then you end up in some crazy fucked up situation and you find out who you really are. So that's the kind of writing I've been doing, like thinking about this stuff, but also it's just kind of in my head. Like I know who these characters are and what they're going to do. So the very fucking first crazy night of adventure starts out in San Francisco. So once again, it sounds similar to yours in the fact that I'm centering it around the Bay Area in Northern California. That's where we live. If you guys didn't know, we're Eureka, California is Northern California.
Actually, Northern California, as opposed to San Francisco, which is pretty much Central California.
Well, no, but it's Central California. See, I'm from the Bay Area, and the reason we always thought we were Northern California is because we're not Southern California, and we're in Central California is like Modesto. And like when you're driving through all those cattle ranches, like the Inland Empire is Central California.
Which is funny. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I understand to the rest of the world.
Well, and then you can't just call it all the Bay Area too, because a lot of people are like, how big is the Bay Area? Like Sacramento's not the Bay Area. Like there's like, anyway, there's scenes in Oakland and in San Francisco and in Marin, Sonoma, Mendocino, Humboldt. I'm covering everything from the Bay Area up.
Yeah, the Shari/Gray story is pretty much all here.
Yeah,
and it's kind of it's not autobiographical or anything, but it's definitely going to have like some like little flavorings of my own story in there too. So I think he's going to have like some East Coast family, or she's going to have some East Coast family, and her family, like her dad and whatnot, has East Coast family, but like
let's just kind of flesh this out just a little bit more, because I think it is interesting. Like, does the character kind of form in your head first? I think it is a good question to ask for comic creators. Where do you start? Do you start with the plot, or do you start with the character?
I definitely start with the character, like,
yeah,
because the character itself kind of started like just almost like direct, like heavy metal reference.
Okay,
it was like initially kind of like a Tarna ripoff.
Okay,
from the last segment of heavy metal where she's like riding
the pterodon or whatever it is.
Yeah, the flying bird thing.
Yeah.
And
pteranodon.
And so she's like, got a sword, and she's all quiet, and actually I don't think she talks at all. Like, she's just got this like medallion that she's showing around, and that was actually kind of a part of the the first story that I was really writing about her. Was like she was showing this like thing around to try to find people, because she was also like mute. I've kind of given up on her being mute, but I'm almost kind of like wondering if I want to, just to like try to explore that.
Interesting. Well, okay, so I think that's good. So without giving away too much, it sounds like you really flesh out the character, and then you start thinking about, do you think about
circumstances,
things you want to have happen to them, or do you start thinking about the world that they're in? And
the world that they're in, because I love like, the world after a collapse kind of stories. So like that's what I want to tell, because it lets you like incorporate aspects of modern society, but also fantastical elements if you want to, because it's a whole different world.
Something weird happened.
Yeah. And then also has like the lawlessness that like our society doesn't necessarily have. There's parts of our world that
Well,
have
that's why we get
certain
along so well,
policies.
man.
But like,
That's what I'm into too. So you know what I'm into? I'm into future fantasy and historical sci-fi.
I can dig it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I like getting into all this idea of maybe there was technology in the past and we've kind of lost. But I love the idea of trying to tell a kind of timeless story where it could have been technology that we didn't know about that happened in the past, or it could be some sort of future that gets more in tune with the way we lived in the ancient times, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I think that's why the collapse is so funny, and everyone's kind of wants to be like, watch the end of the world. But for me, what happens after the end of the world, quote unquote end of the world, is way more interesting.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, we're going to keep you guys updated, and we'll try and drop in as much sneak previews as we can. If you like anything that we're saying, you know that you got to come through and support the projects that we're working on now, because just like Harley said, there's always that next project as a comic creator, and it's more like you have to pick and choose, or at least this is not all comic creators, but I think that sometimes you have lots of good ideas and you really have to distill the one that you think you want to tell most. And that I think that's a real challenge too, is to know which one's the one to really put your time into. It's always a labor of love, so you really got to love the story and the characters, or you're going to be fighting uphill, And so I think it's really cool that we're getting one under our belt, and then that can open up opportunities to tell more stories.
Absolutely. Looking forward to sharing some stuff with you guys.
Make sure that you are connected with Defiant Creative, because we're just wanting to shout out all the other creative people who are in the community doing cool stuff, because it's hard to keep up. So that's why I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for people to kind of get a little interview, do a little advertising, and if you're doing anything cool, to make sure that we have a place where we can keep a record of it, so it doesn't just get lost into the feed. We want to make sure we have a little hub where we're keeping track of all the stuff that's going by.
And Shadow Gallery is definitely a place that I want to help facilitate Defiant into growing and supporting each other, for sure, because we both have lots of dreams that we want to achieve.
Yeah, well, I'll bring my book by for sure. So next time we'll spend a little time talking a little more about our comics, maybe showing some artwork and letting you guys know about other cool comic artists who are in our community. We've got all that coming and more. So thanks for letting me come by and record at your shop again. And it's always a pleasure. We want some comments below. Do you want us to do more strict planned out interviews, or do you like us having a nice rambling conversation where we talk about whatever we want? That would be the one thing. Put in the comments below. Do you like it when we just have a random conversation? Huh? What do you think? How is it? How are we doing? Anyway, it's good to realize that people are going to see this, and you might be seeing this in the future. So just so you know, we're talking about the Comic-Con in Eureka, October 22nd in 2022. So remember this day in history, folks. We're going to have 2 fresh new comics for you guys to check out. All right. One love.